Megan, jump in here. Obviously, a strong brand. This is something that you guys are obviously following in terms of different brand awareness. And as DTC, direct to consumer, e-commerce is kind of the way of the future. The one of the ways that I'm guessing that helps that transition is having a strong brand and that brand awareness.
Absolutely. So whenever we're listening for Levi's, we're listening for people who are talking about specifically purchasing Levi jeans or any type of Levi denim. And what's interesting is that last quarter, when we came to you guys and we talked to you about what we were watching with this demand for Levi's, we saw it was pretty bleak. We saw, I think, purchase intent levels were down about 15% year over year, and definitely continuing that downtrend. And now when we look at purchase intent in 20Q3, so that ended around the end of August, we're actually seeing a little bit of an improvement. It's still down around 4% year over year for the quarter that they're about to report, but we see continued acceleration into the current quarter. And I think you can see that on this chart. So these are mentions of people who are actually talking about buying a pair of Levi's. And you can see to the far right end that they're improving, right? And it's actually coming to close to being comparable. And what we're seeing that's actually driving a lot of these mentions, when we look specifically in the months of September and what we have in October, is that a lot of people are talking about navigating Levi's website or attempting to navigate Levi's website. I think that this is really critical. Even though there are some mentions of people being a little bit frustrated with how the website's presented, it shows that people are actually starting to turn to that channel. It shows that Levi is continuing to grow this DTC presence, this goal that they've had. I think it's relevant that last quarter, they mentioned that I think digital purchases represented about 15% of total revenue versus prior being only about 5%. So I think that this shift is going to be critical for Levi moving forward. But so far, it's definitely a different story this time for Levi versus when we talked to you guys the last time.
Now, that's really interesting, Megan, because just so you know, your purchase intent on Levi and the recovery that you see in the purchase intent is actually quite correlated to the recovery in the stock price, down from, let's see, just check my numbers, a low of around $12 back up to 14.5. So you've got a pretty big recovery here in the stock, correlating to about the same time that your purchase intent recovered. So I think you're onto something here. I think Levi is, one of those stable brands that is never really going to go away, and they're very iconic. And I think that you guys, your data is showing what is actually happening not only in the underlying health of this company, but in the stock price as well, as it's made a pretty nice recovery here from down, obviously in the coronavirus, in the depths of March, it got down below 10, but it's spent a lot of time right around $12, now trading almost $15, guys.
Yeah, and Megan, question for you, building on that, is this something that you're obviously tracking trends, and the trend really feels, to Evelyn's point from a few minutes ago, that things are building towards the athleisure space. So whether that's just a fad or it's a general trend that we're going to see kind of evolve over time, companies like Lululemon, companies like Nike seem to be better positioned, at least in the current environment. How important is it for Levi, even if blue jeans fall out of favor for a little bit, to still be that kind of quintessential staple brand, stable brand in this space?
I think that you make a really good point. When we look at these different trends, we do see extreme strength in Nike. We do see, these mentions, especially of Lulu being able to capture these digital purchases, and just a general shift away from denim. When we look at just denim purchases overall, those are still pacing down year over year. And I think that that's relevant. But what's interesting is when you start to look at, okay, so even though denim is down year over year, which brands are performing well? Is there one brand that's outperforming another? Typically, when we come on the show and talk with you guys, we talk about how well American Eagle is doing and how well American Eagle denim is doing and how that's really helping to drive American Eagle's growth. But now we're kind of seeing a shift. It was actually shocking. We kind of tested the data a couple of times just to confirm, and we're actually seeing mentions or purchase intent mentions for American Eagle jeans are pacing right now down about 29% year over year versus a little bit of recovery for Levi. So I think that that's significant. I think that that shows that some brands are hurt more than others, specifically with this back to school season. I think that that's definitely something that we're watching. An American Eagle, just softness overall in that name. But with Levi, it's promising that maybe this is a stable brand, and the fact that they're still able to continue to grow, that they weren't quite as impacted by that demographic that's going back to school.
And Megan, kind of a follow-up on that. Of course, there's no perfect answer to what I'm going to ask, so I'm kind of throwing that disclaimer. When you guys are looking at this data and you're trying to see that, and like you said, you double, you triple, you quadruple checking it sometimes just to make sure what you're seeing. Sometimes the trends can shift so quickly to make sure what you're looking at is truly what the data reflects. Do you ever step back and say, why might that be? Is it because, maybe the consumer that maybe is more like Kevin, who maybe only has one or two pairs of jeans, when they go out and get that pair of jeans, they don't venture outside what they don't know. Maybe they stick to the stable, staple, consumer facing brand of Levi or something similar that they've known for so long. Is that maybe part of the reason why, or is there something else going on that we just can't see?
I think that definitely could be part of it. A lot of the tweets mentioned that consumers really like how customizable you can get with Levi's sizing. I think that there's a little bit of an inhibitor because it's hard to find a size if you can't really try it on in a store first. However, if you do know your size, there is a bit of people like being able to find a pair of jeans that fits them just how they want it to fit. I think that the demographics come into play a bit. American Eagle is probably tilted more toward a younger audience, but as Evelyn hit on earlier, I think Levi has a much wider demographic base. And so I think that that's kind of helping them and actually sheltering them in this time of when, back to school looks so different. That's going to impact more of a brand that is reliant on this back to school, getting school clothes search. Whenever you're watching classes from home, it doesn't really matter if you're wearing jeans or if you're wearing your Nike shorts. So I think that, that's key here too. And so for us, it's interesting to see a divergence between these two brands, between these two representations of denim, but it's definitely a different story for Levi moving forward. It's what you want to see, that build back and that more return to normalcy from a consumer demand level.